How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the UKnowAdamTsang podcast, where you get to know a little bit more about people, passions, and all things business. Today, I'm sitting across the way from Stuart Gregory of Bulloch Solutions. Stuart, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I am super excited about this one. Seems like, you are definitely moving extremely quick with the new building.
Yes.
Right across the street from So Yummy Asian Kitchen. But before we get into all that, I guess tell me a little bit about kind of where you came from. When you were younger, what you went through to get to where you are today.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm from St. Augustine Beach. Grew up back and forth between St. Augustine and Jacksonville. Moved around a good bit. Ended up graduating from a magnet school in Jacksonville, and then didn't really know what to do with my life. 9/11 happened. And I figured there was going to be a draft, so I went ahead and signed up to get a good job and not get stuck with a bad job, for lack of a better term. And left Florida in October of 2001 and went to the U.S. Army and trained in a couple of different MOS skill sets. Ended up working with explosives for a little bit. Ended up finishing out with military intelligence as a crypto analyst. So a bunch of nerd stuff. And then I got out and went back to Florida and started developing, for lack of a better term, a drinking problem and drug problem. And it really got a hold to me after a couple of years, and I ended up moving to Statesboro. There was a program here at that time that was renowned worldwide for one of the most highly successful kind of therapies for
Had you heard of Statesboro at that time?
No.
Okay.
No. I didn't even know where I was going when I was on the way here.
Gotcha.
I just heard we were going to the woods.
Okay.
So I came here for about 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
13 years ago.
Okay.
And I love it here.
Yeah.
There's a great community here. I met my wife here. I built a life here.
Yeah.
And so when I got done with the treatment, ended up being in some version of supervised treatment for almost 3 years, and worked in treatment for a number of years, and then started kind of growing out of that and went to Ogeechee Technical College. I have a background in construction.
Okay.
And went to Ogeechee Technical College for their drafting program that they had at the time, and got a job at an architecture firm from that. Did that for a couple of years, and then was just really bored. Didn't have the passion that you were talking about, and went back to Ogeechee Tech and studied their computer information systems programs with Donnie and Terry, who run those programs. And my very first computer class was A+.
Okay.
And 3 weeks in, we built our very first computer. I mean, practical application. It was like, hey, these are the parts. Here's how you assemble it. Install Windows. And I was like, this is easy. And I opened my shop 3 weeks later.
3 weeks later.
3 weeks later.
So 3 weeks after you built your first computer, you opened shop.
Yes.
Wow.
In the 3 weeks into my very first class.
Okay.
So I had some money saved up, and I took my classes at night and kept my day job for a little bit, and then went full time and hired some students that were in class with me that were capable, and we did just over $100,000 in sales our very first year.
That's awesome.
Out of the back half of Nancy's hair salon on Zetterauer. Didn't even have a front door. We had a bathroom, a workbench, but the area was hungry for consumer-based electronic support.
Mm-hmm.
So we were fixing iPhones, fixing computers, helping with camera systems and restaurant stereo systems, and just anything that people around here thought IT guys did. Oh, you're an IT guy, come fix my 70-volt stereo system, which is not a regular stereo system by any stretch of the imagination. but we were good at Google and good at YouTube,
Sure.
and learned and taught, and and that turned into this kind of explosive growth pattern that we've been in pretty much since day one.
That's so crazy when you take a moment to look back at it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's various parts in the story that I have a lot of curiosity about.
Sure, sure,
Let's go back to the addiction side of
sure.
things.
Yeah, absolutely.
You said that early on you lacked potential passion and different things.
Mm-hmm.
Was finding passion the thing that eventually broke you from that addiction? Or what was it that kind of like helped along that path?
So the thing that we talk about a lot is finding a sufficient substitute, and that's kind of like a loaded statement, kind of across the board. But part of my addiction and a lot of the people that I've worked with in the past's description of it is there's like this hole that we're trying to fill, and mood altering substances fill that hole. The challenge becomes is the cycle of chaos and just destruction and devastation that goes along with it. And so I had to find a different way to get a buzz. And that's the sufficient substitute is, all right, so how do I find a different way to get a buzz? Where am I fulfilled? Where am I content? And what I've kind of built my life on, and what gives me the passion, is I figured out a way to help people solve their technology problems. I've done it for years in the addiction space and in the treatment space of helping those people solve their problems, and still do it in a capacity of volunteer.
Wow.
Now, because if I don't maintain the freedom that comes along with feeding the new buzz of helping people find solutions to their problems, then I don't get to keep it. And so that, I think, is really what the kind of the mountaintop of this whole thing was. I figured out a way that I could use my abilities and my skill sets and my talents to help people solve problems, technology, or life problems.
Yeah, can you take me back to that moment? So at some point you said that I need help.
Yes.
And a lot of people, that's one of the hardest steps of saying,
Oh, yeah,
hey,
absolutely.
I need this done.
Yes.
When did you realize that, hey, like this is about the time?
So it took a while, because I was good at making it pretty. And so when I burned it down the last time was probably spring of 2006. And I had gone to see some doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists. I did acupuncture.
You were trying.
Oh yeah, for sure. I thought something was wrong. And in my head, and the information that I had was, if I have a chemical imbalance, because that's what everybody was telling me, then more chemicals should balance it out,
Sure.
right? Well, no, that's not how this particular problem works. And so I had gone through all that, and it took about a year and a half, and then and at the end it was just this kind of epic. I just resigned to the fact that I was just going to live and die this way, and that there was no hope for resolution. There was no hope for any kind of peace. And I had a friend who had gone to treatment and participated in a 12-step recovery program, and he came.
The one in Statesboro?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And this was back in St. Augustine, and he talked to me and said, hey, this, what I'm about to tell you kind of defies logic, because what is sitting in a circle talking about my feelings and my experiences, how does that keep me from wanting to drink or wanting to use drugs or something like that? And it's a contributing factor of changing my behavior patterns and changing my psychic patterns of and it's called cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's taking actions that bring about psychological change. And the interesting thing about that is if you get used to, and it's very military almost, or going to the gym, is you take the action, and as a result, you have a change physically or psychologically. It's the same thing with this, and so I took a bunch of action and got favorable results and change in how I thought and how I felt and what my priorities were and all that, because I was sick. I mean, I was suffering from something that defied logic, because given all opportunities in the world, why would I continue to burn my life to the ground? And so this cognitive behavioral therapy approach of taking action and then getting a result, on the backside, kind of built this whole model of driven. And so I don't concern myself too much with weighing out this or weighing out that. I'm constantly in action, and as a result, I'm getting all this cool stuff that's happening on the back end that I don't even, like, I know it's possible, or I know it's coming, or I can kind of weigh out what the results will be, but it's just a different way to approach life, because the worst thing that can happen right now, and this is a question that I pose to people that I work with and personally, and things that I'm doing professionally, is what's the worst thing that can happen in any situation? Well, the worst thing that can happen is nothing. Doesn't work. Because the worst thing that can happen to me is my life burns to the ground and I go back to where I was. But that's not even on my radar anymore. So what's the worst thing that can happen now? Nothing. What's the best thing that can happen? It works. You're successful at whatever that endeavor is. And so that is an approach that I've applied to, almost every aspect of my life. And it's so far, because my motives and intentions and ideas are positive and about positivity and packing positivity into the world around me, that there isn't any kind of nefarious, motivation or energy in there. And so as a result, there's this, just wave of awesome positive stuff that is happening in my life and the lives of the people that I hang out with. And so I try to surround myself with people who think that way, whether they do it consciously or unconsciously. I try to surround myself with people that are positive and honest and have integrity and are driven and are innovative or trying to think outside the box. Because Statesboro is a great community. I love it here. But there isn't a lot of. I'm from a big city. And it's just a different environment. It's a different culture. I'd never seen a Carhartt or a Georgia boot until I moved here. Where I'm from, you can wear flip-flops anywhere you want to go, and so it was just a different thing. But this community has helped me build a life that I never knew I even wanted, and I get to dabble in all kinds of crazy stuff as a result of it.
It's very inspiring, the story, especially for someone that has had to, struggle with addiction and then being able to break through that. What is a word of advice? Maybe somebody out there is dealing with the same exact thing that you're going through. What is something that you could tell them for them to potentially make the change to get to where potentially you are today?
Don't run, don't run from the problem. There are millions of people that have recovered and no longer suffer. The solution makes zero sense. It's an illogical kind of solution. But if you look at the problem being equally illogical, then of course the solution's illogical. I don't know why talking about my experience keeps me from repeating it. But for some reason, for a little over 13 and a half years, that is my experience. So don't run is the easiest thing you can do. And find somebody, because recovered people are everywhere. There's more recovered people recovered people in Statesboro than almost any other town per capita.
Why do you think that's the case?
Because people have been coming here since the 60s to get sober and never left. I came here for 4 to 6 weeks in 2007.
And then you're still here.
I'm still here. My wife came here in 2007 from Vidalia, and she's still here. And she's been sober. She's coming up on 14 years this year. And there's just decades of that happening.
Oh, that's super fascinating to me because, for the longest time, Bulloch County has been a dry county. And even right now, they're making moves to change that. Do you have a certain feeling about that?
No.
Good? Bad?
I'm indifferent. If people want to drink, they're going to drink, whether it's a dry county or not. Just because I can't doesn't mean somebody else shouldn't. If you're prone to multiple DUIs, maybe you shouldn't drink.
Absolutely.
No, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, if you don't have what I have, rock on, man. Have one for me.
Yeah.
But for me personally, I'm not out to be a prohibitionist or anything like that. I think that's counterproductive to the conversation about how we deal with mood and mind altering substances but yeah, no, I mean, rock on, sell alcohol, sure.
That's cool. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. We've kind of it seems like now you're channeling that energy into other projects.
Yes.
And so, let's kind of like dig into a little bit of, the business side of things.
Sure.
So the first thing that, going back to your intro earlier, you said 3 weeks into working with computers, you said, hey, we're about to start a business.
Yes.
What made you do that? Were you always, to most people, that would be like, oh man, that's super risky. Like you haven't even finished the class yet.
Right. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It was the passion. It was the spark. Like it.
You felt it?
Immediately.
What did it feel like?
Hope, honestly, because I was a little lacking. I mean, I had a stable job working at an architecture firm, and I was doing 60, 70 hours a week of drafting in AutoCAD, but it wasn't fulfilling. There wasn't any contentment derived from it other than I had a roof and food and I could pay my bills.
Sure.
And when I was in this class and the teacher, Terry, was super invigorated and energetic and made the information super easy to consume. And he handed a miscellaneous box of just parts. And we had to go and figure out how to get all the different parts to match together and then get it to turn on. And then, I could see it. I could see how that happened. It clicked. I mean, just like that. And it offered me hope. I was like, so I immediately was like, all right.
Did you not see that with the drafting?
No, I mean, I've done that my whole life. I worked, my dad's a general contractor, so I worked in construction, and then I worked in architectural design, and it's a great skill set.
Sure.
I've used it for the past 18 months across the street. But that's not where my passion was. That's not where, I didn't have a passion. And I hadn't had a passion really in sobriety until that day in that class, and I was like, this is amazing. And I just ran with it. And that, ironically, that same year, I won an award for OTC. I won the Georgia Occupational Award of Leadership at the state level for the Georgia Technical College system. There was a competition, and you give public talks and all this kind of stuff. And it was out of all the schools, and we were at, we got state. And we've had a couple of, this is just kind of a side note, but it was like morals, ethics, and leadership. And the irony of being nominated and then competing for that, I was like, you know who you're talking to, right? But my history and my background. And I was like, yeah, we don't care.
Yeah.
This is who you are right now.
Yeah.
And so that, coupled with the hope and the passion of the IT, it's like I felt like I was in the right place at the right time, and that it was an opportunity that I needed to capitalize on. And at that point, the worst thing that could happen is I wasn't going to be successful.
That's right.
But I could go do something else. I've done all kinds of stuff. And so I jumped in, went on the Secretary of State website and registered a name and got a tax ID number, opened a bank account, and we started. And I hired part-time as needed a couple of the guys that were sitting next to me in class, and they thought I was a lunatic. And
are any of them working with you?
Yeah,
you now?
yeah. One is still with me,
Uh-huh.
and he is. So we had 3 that kind of part-timed in the beginning, but one is still with me. Blake, he and I have been working together since the very, very beginning.
That's awesome.
And now he just got promoted to a project manager, and so he's overseeing a lot of our install projects and managing them from start to finish. And he's doing an amazing job. And so, but yeah, I mean, and he's passionate about it, and we had like-minded ideas, and so we really wanted to do this, and so we did, and it's that hope and that passion and that spark, that inspiration is what kind of, it hasn't gone away. It's waned and ebbed and flowed, but it's always been there, and so that's how I know I'm doing the right thing. This is where I belong.
So you started in the back of a hair salon,
Yes.
which is I'm sure that was interesting within itself.
Yes.
Tell me, how you navigated that to the building that you are today.
Okay. Oh, wow. So it was strategic partnerships and getting with people that believed in what we were selling. And so we went from there to one of our clients was just renovating a new building, a new office space for them. And so we brokered a deal where we would pull all the low voltage wire and do all the data jacks and computers and servers and Wi-Fi for free if we got to be in the building for free.
Okay.
And so we did that.
Sure.
And we did that for a while, and it grew. I mean, we were the only people in town at the time fixing iPhones and doing that. So we always had that kind of traffic, but we were aiming for managed contracts and big installs and innovation. The model is one person to yell at, one check to write. If you were opening a restaurant or a new business and you needed everything, you needed a POS system, you needed a projector, you needed speakers, Wi-Fi, all in one place. And then we would manage it long term so that if you ever had any challenges, you don't run into the situation of which of the 9 people that installed your job do you call. Because if you can't print, you have to call your IT guy, and your IT guy is going to blame the printer guy, and the printer guy is going to blame the IT guy, and it may be your network guy who you need to talk to. And it's just all this kind of stuff. And we tried to take this kind of concierge guide mentality to it, where we understand this, we know how to make it all work in concert, and we'll manage it for you from start to finish and ongoing. And that model was this market was just thirsty for that and hungry for it. And we've done a number of restaurants, we've done a number of businesses, doctors' offices, law firms, and most of those clients started during that time. And so as we grew, location grew, and so we were way out by Ogeechee Tech, and that was terrible for walk-in traffic because nobody's really stopping out there. They're driving about 60 miles an hour down 301 to get there, and so an opportunity arose for a suite at Market District, and it was a little 800 square foot, tiny.
Right next to McAllister's.
Right next to McAllister's, a couple doors down. And so we moved there, and our walk-in traffic tripled overnight. And we stayed there, and we started managing our relationships. And that's when the introduction to Bulloch Telephone got into the mix. Is we figured out that our customers have a better user experience if they have Bulloch Fiber for their internet at their business. And it made our job a lot easier to manage, maintain, and improve connectivity for them if their internet worked all the time.
Sure.
I mean, I know that's a far-fetched idea for some people, but and we continued to grow the business, and then an opportunity arose to expand, and there was an empty suite upstairs, and so we kept the suite downstairs for our visual front of the house, and I was upstairs with one of the other project managers, and then another opportunity arose, and we got out of that suite, and we rented a 5,000 square foot suite, and filled up about half of that.
Oh, so you moved twice within market.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And then when we took that bigger suite, we were partnering with another local company, Capstone Benefits Consulting, and an opportunity arose to partner with them professionally, and we formed Capstone Technology Solutions with the owners of Capstone Benefits Consulting. And what really precipitated that was the Affordable Care Act kind of forced people who sold health care to employers for the employees had to generate this new form that was kind of like a W-2, but it was about insurance, not pay. And our approach was, hey, that's just data. We can figure the data out. That's a spreadsheet and some tables, and we can figure it out. And
so at that point, you had moved past just like, physical technology.
Yes.
Like way past that. Because like now you're dealing with actually coding, programming, so forth and so on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it was kind of stemmed from our customers. We were always about the solution. That's what the dynamic solutions, and then even when Capstone Technology Solutions came, we were always about the solution. It was trying to solve problems or challenges. And the running joke for a long time is that we never told anybody no. We always asked them what their budget was, and then would work backwards from there to develop their solution. And that approach is how we did the ACA. And it's real boring, technical, nerdy stuff, but we ended up figuring out a way to do it relatively successfully. I mean, when I say relatively, it's been 100% successful. But we solved a problem for our customer and partner that solved a problem for their clients and their customers. And so there was this chain of solution that solved a problem that a bunch of people were selling and trying to do, that they weren't doing it as well as we had come up with. Our strategy was relatively simple, relatively straightforward, because we had kind of blinders on about what the data meant. We just knew we needed the data. We didn't really care what it said. Like, where other approaches got all into the minutia of why. I'm like, that's irrelevant. The solution is we need to process this with this to get this. Cool. All right. So we're going to go do that.
Sure.
And we still do that today. And we help thousands of employees get that form that they need, so that when they go to the IRS, they don't get fined.
So Capstone was actually something that was already existing.
Capstone Benefits was.
Okay.
And then we formed Capstone Technology.
Together.
Yes.
And then you took that technology and then I guess either resold it or leveraged it for the purpose of. Okay, got it.
Leveraged it. And then got into some other stuff. And it was really, about a branding thing. Is when we started getting into municipal contracts and working on projects that are submitted to the IRS, that we were a little hesitant to, like, if the customers pulled up our website and saw that we fixed iPhones, we were a little hesitant about that from a marketing and branding strategy. And so that was really what precipitated the brand of Capstone. And it was kind of our partners were named Capstone Benefits, so we were going to be named Capstone Technology.
Let's have a discussion here about opportunities.
Yes. Yeah.
So, a lot of people are out there looking for, the opportunity. What would you say about kind of like your experience with that?
Oh, wow.
Do you think it's luck? Do you think that you're at the right place at the right time?
It's hard to humble brag here, I think a lot of it gets back to that cognitive behavioral therapy thing for me of drive, where if I see an opportunity to take action that I think is going to be positive, I'm going to take the action. And then whatever the result is whatever the result is. And that I think that approach to my professional life and my career is really what helps us stand out to a certain degree. Because, even if somebody says that, well, I don't have the budget for your solution, I'm still going to go figure it out.
Sure.
Like, because I just want to know.
Sure.
I want to solve that challenge. I want to solve that problem. And so I think, it's a lot of opportunity of being at the right place at the right time, but also not hesitating, go ahead and taking the action and figuring out what the results is later. Like if I can assess like the opportunity to partner.
I love that.
Yeah. If I can assess that opportunity and be like, the worst thing that can happen is this doesn't work out. Sure. Why not do it?
That's right. All right. So, going back to our conversation, we were talking about opportunity, and you were about to jump into, you were still in the space back at the market district.
Sure.
And you're looking for that kind of like next step.
Sure. And so we had kind of reached a plateau of what we were capable of in our current economic structure. And, one of the things that we were looking for is expansion, but we didn't know what that looked like, and because we were so busy with the customers that we were having and the growth that we had sustained up to that point, we had reached a place where we were kind of at our capacity, and to move to the next level, something needed to happen. And one of the things that we were doing, and I talked about this a little bit earlier, is like if a customer had Bulloch telephone fiber optic internet, it made my life easier as a service provider. And so I would sell Bulloch telephone's internet as a referral.
Were they just the best?
Yeah, 100%.
No doubt.
No doubt. And getting real nerdy, and I worked there, so this kind of sounds like propaganda, but before that I worked there, when I bought my first house in Statesboro, I bought it based on where Bulloch Fiber was. Like I called and said, "Hey, can I have a map?" And they're like, "No, we're not. Who are you?" No. I was like,
"But you were working for them at that time."
No. Before that. And I was like, "Can I have a map?" And they said no. Okay. And so I was like, "Well, can I at least ask you neighborhoods?" And they said yes.
Okay.
And so I asked them a bunch of neighborhoods that were in my budget, and bought a house based on where their fiber was, because I had two of the other service providers here in town, and it was garbage. Resetting my router constantly, speeds, outages, it was just terrible.
What made their service better?
So it's really about the technology. So about 20 years ago, and I know this now because I worked there, but about 20 years ago, they had to make a decision about what the next step of the network was. And they were weighing the cost benefits of, ADSL, coaxial, fiber, et cetera. And at the time, nobody was really doing fiber at scale. There was pockets of people out in the Midwest that were doing it. Verizon Fios was looking to get into it. And best I can tell, they hired... we hired a consultant, or they at the time hired a consultant, and they're just like, well, this is where everything's going. And it wasn't fiber. And they said, well, we want to do fiber. And so they started doing fiber, and they kind of piggybacked off of Verizon Fios's partnership with Motorola for the hardware that manages the fiber, the ONTs and all this kind of stuff. And so from a historic standpoint, Bulloch Telephone did their first fiber to the home, which is a very specific thing, in 2005. Completed the rebuild of the network by end of 2011. So all of the customers at the end of 2011 had fiber to the home. And it was a significant thing. It was very significant.
Yes.
In 2011 to have fiber optic internet, 100% buried. So, and the buried is kind of a key part, because anytime you have a utility on a pole, if the wind blows or a tree falls, there's risk about
When it's
it.
in the ground, it's not moving anywhere. Unless someone cuts it.
Unless someone cuts it. Unless someone cuts it with a shovel or a backhoe or any of that kind of stuff. And we try to mitigate some of that.
Sure.
But yes, unless somebody cuts it. And so when I was looking to buy a house, I had some of the other internet service providers, and I had heard of a 100% fiber optic network with Bulloch Telephone. And so I sought, a house based on that. Because I was already streaming. I was already I'm an early adopter of everything.
Sure.
I've been on Gmail since the beginning, like Netflix.
I'm the same.
I remember I streamed my first show on Netflix in like 2000. It had to have been late 2008, early 2009. And it was some weird Dutch subtitled movie. I think it was the original Girl with the Dragon Tattoo or something like that. And but early adopter of all those kind of tech things and TVs and streaming speakers, Wi-Fi, stuff. And I knew that if I wanted to have any of that stuff, I needed to have a stable internet network.
Got you. And that's why you went after fiber.
Yeah, and that's why I went after the fiber. And then fast forward, because I was so confident in that, in 2018, I actually built a barn dominium shipping container smart home, and I looked for land where we had fiber.
Yeah.
And then, obviously reached out to the customers that had the fiber there that I knew. And I was like, hey, are y'all going to get weird if I build like a barn dominium? And they're like, what?
What are you doing?
Yeah, what are you doing? And they sent me like 2 pictures. It's like, is it something like this or is it something like this? And I was like, it's like the second one. They're like, okay, we're cool with that. But, circling all that back to, we were trying to figure out what we were going to do. And we had been working with Bulloch Telephone, because if our commercial customers, our business customers, even some of our residential customers had stable buried fiber optic internet, then our job of supporting them in their business and in their technology was easier.
Yeah.
Because if they had an outage and they weren't on Bulloch, then I come and try and fix it or reboot the router or whatever on Monday, and then I send them a bill, and then the following Tuesday it happens again. Do you think they're going to want to see that same bill again?
That's right.
And so from a customer experience and a customer mentality, I was trying. It was my life was easier if they had good internet. And so we had been working with Bulloch Telephone, and then we had started doing some staffing for them, and we had some contractor work for them that we were doing, and I really, give it up to the administration team and the board over there. John Scott, our general manager, which is, it's kind of a weird term, but because we're a cooperative, he's the CEO.
Gotcha.
But in the cooperative space, it's called general manager, but he's the chief executive officer. He was really kind of the driving force behind all that. And he and I come from polar opposites. He's, very thoughtful and engineering and planning and all this kind of stuff. And I'm very instant. And so it took us a couple of years to figure out how we fit together and figure out what that looked like. And what that led to was a buyout. I sold ownership shares to them and got me and my staff went over there, and the long-term goal is to improve the customer experience and enrich the customer experience. And that's even down to why we have Start Your Experience here at the new building.
One thing that I wanted to touch on, that I think is extremely important to, how you've grown. There was a moment in there when the company was being, bought out, that, they identified as you as the main asset that they wanted to obtain.
Yes.
However, you made a decision against that.
Yes.
Tell me kind of like what that was.
For the longest time, my talent in that was working with groups of talented people and bringing that talent together. And if you've ever met a traditional IT guy or seen any of the SNL skits of the IT guy or the printer guy or whatever, there is a social disconnect.
Sure.
And finding somebody who speaks English and geek or nerd or whatever is difficult. And I think that's what made our place unique is, there were multiple people that could talk to a customer without talking down to them.
Sure.
But then also come back to the office and translate it to the team and the technical specs and figure out what the solution was. And but the magic of that made it look like it was my show, and it wasn't. Like I would, just be another sales guy if it weren't for the guys that I worked with and that I collaborated with, and so I was just another cog in that wheel. But drawing on like my project management experience from the construction industry and my design experience from the architectural side, and taking those into problem solvings and here's a challenge, I'm going to think of it logically where they may think of it too technically, and then we find some common ground in the middle. But without the guys that were with me, I was just another sales guy. And so when we had the opportunity to bring those guys over, it was a significant thing for us and for them, because Bulloch Telephone's been around for 71 years. It's known for its customer service. It is known for, and a lot of people don't know this, but the people that do understand it is, they have been on the forefront of internet technology and networking technology before everybody else. Like right now, I've got a little research project going because I'm pretty confident that in that 2005, 2011 space, that Bulloch Telephone was the first 100% fiber optic to the home provider in this. I'm pretty confident in the state of Georgia. I think there were some people doing it in the Midwest, but I'm trying to find proof of it. And that's one hard thing to find proof of, because the lack of evidence is the proof, and so Googling and researching, like, did anybody else have a all fiber network that was gigabit capable or whatever? And we are actually gig certified by the National Telecommunications Association. So bringing all that back in is, I was nothing without my team, and getting my team to come over and giving them the stability of a multi-decade utility company, and somebody that was on the forefront of technology, and somebody that's known for customer service and known for going above and beyond, matched our mission and our principles and our morals and our ethics. Because at the end of the day, we don't exist without a happy customer. At Capstone Technologies, we didn't exist without a happy customer. And Bulloch Solutions, or Bulloch Telephone at the time, was mainly out in the county, and then they were starting to expand into the city. I mean, you have our service here.
That's right.
And there's a number of businesses here in town that we've built to, and we're working on building more into the city residentially and commercially. And it's just a change in the model, because we've always been out in the county. And so now we've got this opportunity with my staff and with John leading the way, that we can enrich the customer experience and further penetrate what's happening inside the home and inside the office, to make everything as seamless as possible. Because especially with this pandemic, home Wi-Fi and Zoom meetings and all that kind of stuff, you have to have your setup right.
Yeah. I mean, I know from experience, whenever my internet is even the least millisecond slow,
Right.
I'm like, what is going on? Like,
Right,
this
exactly.
is it's so frustrating. But that also like, speaks to kind of like our own kind of like evolution of, we rely on this technology so heavily.
Right.
And I can speak about Bulloch Solutions personally just because I use you
Sure.
guys.
Sure.
I have, never come across a utility company that when I call immediately, and it's literally like blinding fast, like to the point where I call and I'm like, hey, I have this issue, and I'm expecting, hey, a day, 2 days, 3 days, whatever it is, walking through the door in the next like 10 minutes. And I think that, it literally like, it sticks in your mind. And I
Sure.
think that's one of the things that you have done extremely well, even from the beginning,
Sure.
right? Like, listening to your strategies from, even when you were starting that computer store, is like, you want to make things easy for the customer experience.
Exactly.
Which is huge, and that's extremely. It continues to inspire me what you've done.
Well, thank you.
So you're in the space of at Capstone.
Mm-hmm.
What eventually pushes you? So there was a buyout.
Yep.
What pushes you to build on this side of town?
Sure. So we were renting.
Okay.
And we had gotten to a place where we needed space and we needed to kind of organize and consolidate and where certain employees were, because I had some employees that stayed in the office and worked, via LogMeIn or TeamViewer or something like that. And they were like on call, remote support. We had some employees that were field installs, and then we had some employees that kind of mingled in between, and
everybody was separate.
Yeah, exactly. And then we were trying to share and manage an office space, and coming through that, the management at Bulloch Telephone, we rebranded, and we wanted to be Bulloch Solutions because we want to be the solutions provider, and that was kind of the mission. And that was a big deal. I mean, it's been Bulloch Telephone Cooperative for forever. Mm-hmm. And technically it's Bulloch County Rural Telephone Cooperative Incorporated, and that's just too much. And so Bulloch Solutions really reflected what the mission and opportunity was, and then that carried over into how do we engage that with purpose and function and operation. And, one of the things, I don't know if you've ever been over to our north side location, over on the other side.
I have.
Yeah. It's likened to a 1985 bank.
Absolutely. I went in there, I was like, what is going on?
Right.
And you walk past it, it's like, oh my goodness, it's still like stuck in the past.
Exactly. And so, with the leadership from John and support of the board, we kind of went down the rabbit hole of let's find some space. And we liked Market District. It's a poppin', bustling area. Sure. We've got a significant amount of infrastructure over there. But it's full for the most part, and so we looked, and we know Mr. Abel over from Elsom, and talked to him about traffic flows and all that kind of stuff, and then there was that lot right between Aaron's and Elsom, and I was like, this is kind of a perfect spot. And we had looked everywhere. I mean, for a couple of months, and we had a budget and so when we started looking at that, and then thinking about infrastructure and growth and long-term engagements and long-term plans and long-term investment into the community and that kind of thing, that spot started making more and more and more and more sense. And there's really good food really close by.
Basically what he's saying is Market District, your food sucks. I'm just kidding. It's just a joke. Just a joke.
But and there's and we come over here and see you a good bit, and we see Abel a good bit, and visit some of the other restaurants over there, but it just started making more sense, and the way that the lot was shaped provided us an opportunity to really do something impactful. And so John asked me if I would draw and help design the building, and I said, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and this is what
That's
you,
what I
you
used
have.
to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And so I got to be kind of in this interesting spot where, with collaboration, but steer the kind of shape of what the image of the company was, because there are limitations on how you can build in certain areas of Statesboro.
That's
and
right.
what things can look like and what colors can be used and materials, and none of that existed for that lot. So that lot even made more sense. And so we really got to have fun with the idea of super efficient construction, and then super, from my modern, elegant, kind of breaking the mold. So we hired Zach Hawk from Hawk Construction, who is a fantastic general contractor, but he also happens to be a specialist in metal building and metal fabrication. So, I mean, down to like interesting things like the stairs in there. That's called a single stringer metal floating staircase, and it's very specific design. And I found a picture online of some really cool stairs, and I sent it to Zach, and his guys made it for significantly less than what I could buy a kit for online. And but when you see, I mean, all the angles are opposing, and just from the outside, like with the roof lines and the porch portico and all that kind of stuff, there was some design element to that, but there's also some efficiency element to that, because if you have a single slope roof, it's less likely to leak.
That's right.
And if you don't penetrate the roof, it's less likely to leak. So every roof penetration that would be normally on the roof isn't. It's actually under the soffit or on the wall just under the roof.
I got you.
So, less opportunity for roof leak, and but also a super efficient way to manage your water when it rains, like it does in South Georgia, and all that kind of stuff.
That's
right. And then taking those elements and even down to the spray foam insulation that we used, and then Ogeechee Heating and Air did an amazing variable speed, multi-zone, high SEER HVAC system with an air filtration system that kills cold and flu and all kinds of bacteria and viruses and all this kind of stuff, and that's super energy efficient. It was an awesome opportunity, and when you walk in there like you have, we built a smart home, like in the lobby.
That's right.
So that the customers can come in and get hands-on and guided an experience, have a guided experience of, you see advertisements for Ring and Nest and Google Home and Alexa and the Yamaha soundbar or the Samsung TV or the Roku TV or any number of these things, but did you know that you can incorporate them together? And some people call it might be we're becoming way too lazy. Or it could improve your quality of life or your efficiency and all that kind of stuff, where you can, have and this is one of our favorite ones, is you ask Google to play Purple Rain by Prince, and it turns all the lights purple in the apartment, and then the shower comes on. And that's funny and silly, but think about all the moving parts that has to work together to make that happen. And I've been playing around in the smart home space for a while, and I've done it at my house. I did it at my old house. And there's an interesting thing, and this is kind of a crazy side note, but there's this interesting thing that I found from Berkshire Hathaway. So I went to sell my house in 2018 because I was going to build a house. And I waited to start to sell my house until my new house was getting close to being done. and I put my house on the market, and this Berkshire Hathaway thing, and then also Coldwell Banker had something on this too, at the national level, is that homes that had smart features increased the sale value of single digit, and in some instances super low double digit value, where if you had like an automatic door lock and a video doorbell and a smart thermostat or a couple of cameras and security or whatever, that it increased the value of your home. And I had that stuff in my house. My house sold in 2018 in 11 days for significantly more than what my mortgage was and my payoff was. And it did force me, my new house wasn't finished yet, so I had to live in an apartment for a couple of months, much to my wife's dismay. And so I've been playing in that space since then. And then in my new house, it's voice command, and I'm a Google Home, I'm a Google guy, and so I've got like Google Home and Nest and Max speakers everywhere, and it controls my fans and my lamps, and I've got door locks and all that kind of stuff, and I've been in that space, and I love it because it's interesting. And if you think about it, just at the very least from an efficiency standpoint, I never forget to turn my air up when I leave. I never forget to turn lights off or fans off, because if I don't do it, it happens.
Yeah, automatically.
Right.
Yeah. So that technology is amazing to play with. And I think that what's interesting about you is your depth.
Sure.
So, one of the things that really resonates with me, and I see that just because, obviously like my background was computer science, I understand the lingo. I think a lot of times people are crippled by what they should do with their lives.
Right.
They think in their mind like, oh my God, I don't want to go down this path and not realize, something. And I just wanted to kind of like get your opinion on that, because it seems like you've kind of like had various different almost careers, right? In all of this.
Oh yeah.
And what's fascinating about that is in the position that you are in now, you still are leveraging everything that you've kind of like, seen in the past.
Yeah.
So for you, like, how do you approach that? With someone that, is like, I don't know if I should go down this career path. What do you think? Do you kind of push them towards, well, try it and see what happens?
Absolutely. I mean, you're from computer science, and you're one of the foremost, in the restaurants now. Yeah, exactly. That's and that's interesting. And I'm sure when you were sitting in, your COBOL or your C+ class or whatever class you were taking, you weren't thinking about buying an old Carrie Hilliard's and turning it into an amazing, I almost want to say Asian fusion.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's amazing. I love eating here.
Thank you.
I eat here weekly, sometimes twice and 3 times a week.
I like it.
But yes, why be handicapped and or hindered or tied down to some idea when you don't know if the grass is greener. And I think you have to be very careful though, because if you're doing it like the grass is greener, most of the time the grass isn't greener on the other side, because your motivations are wrong. Your intentions are wrong. But if you are not happy in the environment that you are in and you are giving it 100%, then explore other opportunities. There's no reason to not be happy and content in what you're doing,
especially in this day and age.
Exactly.
Used to, you didn't have any other choice,
right? And now everything's so diversified. You could do programming on Fiverr,
just on the side,
and do that until you find what supports you. Before I got the job at the architecture firm, I had 5 part-time jobs. I worked at a horse farm, like cutting grass and shoveling manure and taking trash to the dump, and I worked on a detox unit, basically a high-paid babysitter for people that were detoxing. I was a graphic laborer. I don't even want to say graphic designer, but they could tell me stuff and I could do it in Photoshop. And I did all those things until I could, as a stepping stone, until I could find the next thing. And then the architecture thing was one job at one time that could pay me enough to pay my bills. And it was a stepping stone because I wasn't going to be an architect. I didn't have any interest in that, but I knew how to draft, and I knew that talent and skill could make money and feed me and pay my bills while I figured out what I wanted to do. And then, and I worked in treatment. I had for a little while, a little treatment center where young men that were seeking recovery could come.
And how does one, I guess, quantify what their next move should be, right?
Oh yeah. And, when thinking about something like that, I did it in the past where, I had 5 part-time jobs.
That's right.
To support myself while I figured out what the next job was. And in this economy and in this day and age, you can be diversified. We talked about even but you can do computer science stuff on Fiverr or something like that on the side. But there's no reason today that you can't be happy in what you do. There are for hire signs everywhere. Everywhere. People are looking for work or people are looking for employees, and that may not be the long-term job that you want. And I don't want to promote, using and abusing, opportunities as a step stool, but also, looking at an opportunity as, a bridge to the next step, I mean, the irony of all of this is that 13 years ago, I was riding my bicycle down Brannan to Crystal's to flip burgers and clean grease traps and pressure wash the dumpster pad. And I did that. And then today, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
But the impetus, for lack of a better term, of the new building and the new opportunity and where I'm at right now, being directly across the street of where I used to ride my bike 13 years ago.
That's huge.
It's amazing. It's so much gratitude and just kind of humility, for lack of a better term. And it's very, very humbling because, at the end of the day, all I did was show up at each step. And I worked, but I just showed up. This door opened, I was there. That door opened, I was there. That window opened, I was there, and I showed up. And because I feel like I tried to be as positive as possible and as engaging as possible, that my intentions were good, and we ended up where I am right now. I mean, I'm living somebody else's dream, man. Like, I get to do stuff that I never would have imagined. I bought a camper last year. It's like I got skeeved out. I didn't want to stay in any hotel rooms because of the pandemic, and
Sure.
so I was like, I want to buy a hotel on wheels,
Yeah.
and then realized that I'd never seen Georgia. Like I've been to Savannah and Atlanta, but a little bit in Macon, but that was it. So I took the camper and went to like these obscure state parks all over the state of Georgia, up into the mountains, up west and northeast, and saw this beautiful state that we live in. And I spent my money here, local, trying to support my state, support my community, but also to be a good resident of the state. I had never seen any of this stuff. I had no clue it even existed. I lived in Statesboro, and the most common trip to Savannah is to catch a plane. It's
Sure.
like I'm leaving. But that wasn't an opportunity that we had. So I went to state parks and I went to national forests and engaged in it that way. And turns out I like being outside. Didn't know. No clue.
Always trying something new.
Exactly.
If you ever take a step, like a moment, and look back and think about, everything that you've accomplished, If there was something that you could say to your younger self, what would it be?
Honestly, nothing. Because if I impacted that guy in any way, I wouldn't be here. You know, the struggle, the pain, the success, the accomplishment, the contentment, the love, none of that I have today, if I would have happened if I impact that guy in the slightest bit different than what path he was on to get me here. You know, and you know, and I say that with a pretty good confidence that you know, at the end, before I got sober, death would have been a gift. And today, I'm so far removed from that, from even being on my radar. I mean, my wife's in grad school right now, and she's going to have a break soon, and we're going to go on a trip. And when she gets out of school, we're going to go on more trips. And I have a great job where I'm supported, and my family's okay, and my friends are okay. And, you know, and don't get me wrong, the world is full of problems, and
Sure.
my life has problems.
Sure.
Those problems are luxurious compared to the problems that I came here with. And so if I said anything to that guy 13, 15, 20 years ago, I would rob him of this. And I don't want, no, I'm good, man. We're good.
That's right.
Yeah.
What an amazing story. Stuart, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the show. I really appreciate, you know, all the knowledge that you've imparted. Such an inspiring thing.
Thank you.
You know, for me, it's having to deal with the addiction and being able to channel your energy into something that you absolutely love.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me, Adam. This is awesome. It's always great to see you, and it's always great to see really cool tech.
Yeah.
And so I'm really appreciative, and you're great at this. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Sounds good, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. See you.